All right, yeah, introductions. So I'm Roger Rayle, Chair of CARD and Chair of Site Residents for Safe Water, and I'm into my 26th year watching over this 1,4-dioxane Gelman contamination.
I'm Shauna Milkey, Ann Arbor resident and secretary for CARD.
Beth Collins, Ann Arbor resident.
Marcia Haddix, Ann Arbor resident.
No, Side Township trustee.
Vince Crusoe, board member of CARD and coordinator member of the Adams Creek Watershed Group.
Rita Loctruso.
Dan Hamill, the DEQ project manager for the Gelman site.
Bob Bailey, Style resident.
Jenny Kahn, Washtenaw County Health Department.
Max Fabon, Ann Arbor resident.
2 city council members.
What year's coincidence?
You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Kathy Griswold. I'm just here for orientation, really, to learn more about CARD, the wonderful things.
City council member.
Yes,
Which
council
ward?
member. Ward 2.
Jeff Hayner from City Council, Ward 1.
Great, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Kathy, your first time, right?
Yes, it is, but I always listen to what you have to say and have complete confidence.
Oh, teach you the handshake.
Well, then you can leave. All right,
Minutes.
Minutes. So has the board members had a chance to review the minutes? All right. Enough to vote? Okay, I move that we approve the minutes from the December meeting. So this is a vote for the board members.
I'll second.
Second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thanks for doing it.
Yeah.
okay, then DEQ updates is first this time.
Okay. I got a handful of the updates. Something came up in the December sampling, MW103S. If you remember, there has been questions. Dan Bicknell had a question about the in compliance at that location, and we presented an argument or how we are interpreting the compliance at MW103S in the December quarterly report that I sent out. There's a write-up under the issues. Well, after that write-up came, in fact, the day I sent it out, DEQ, Gelman sampled MW103S monthly, like they do it monthly, and it was greater than 85. It was 88 on December, they sampled it on December 3rd, ran the analytical on December 4th. They sent me an email immediately, as we asked them to do, and identified that. So if you remember the compliance, that argument identifies that if they have 85, greater than 85 for 2 consecutive monthly samplings, whatever lab, whether it's their lab, any other labs, then there's some actions that need to be, they have to start implementing. Most of which, the main one is more of a contingency plan to see if, to start talking about investigating and talking about potential groundwater contamination migration outside the prohibition zone to the south of MW103S at concentrations greater than 85. So they have an 88 in December. I've set up I've set up split sampling with them. We are going to do it on January 16th. They will sample the monthly sample at 103S again. I'm also going to sample that day 112I, which is adjacent, right on the boundary. They haven't had anything.
That's the one up there you're showing.
Yeah, I didn't even look at the screen. Yeah. So we're going to be sampling both those split samples. Gelman will be sampling that day, and I'll split with him. And we will evaluate and review what the necessary steps are if suddenly there is concentrations greater than 85 in any of the labs. So that was some of the questions, some recent questions and emails that have gone back and forth. So I just wanted to give you an update. Gelman followed what we asked them to do. They immediately, within a day, sent me an email and identified that. and asked if I would like to split. I said yes, and we set it up.
When will you let us know what those results are?
Well, okay, I will get, my lab's gonna do them within probably 10 days. So I can send that out. I don't know, Gelman will be, the last time, they usually do theirs within a couple days, so I will be asking to get their results as soon as I can. I mean, again, he let me know in an email. So I can let people know after that. But we would wanna, like I said, either lab. If it's above 85, then there's some steps. And the next step for us is gonna be sit down with them and go through it was some compliance letters that we sent to them identifying what steps around 103S, and they were done in 2013 and 2014.
You got the
So-
depth there, Roger, for that? Or do you know the depth that well? Roger might have it on.
It's right, it's not here on the data. It's pretty shallow. It's the
Yeah.
only shallow one
What's
that
that,
far
61?
east.
It's 60, 58
63
feet?
feet.
63,
Bottommost screen, 63 feet.
63 to 58.
Yeah, so it's 5-foot screen. Right.
Uh,
So I will keep you posted on that. And again, the first step after, if let's say the scenario goes into that you have an 85 or above, we'll be setting up a meeting to sit down with them and start talking about that.
So the maximum on that, as you can see, was above 90,
Back in 2013 or 12
12 and
or something.
13, but maybe not consecutive months.
No.
But the maximum,
Yeah,
and now the maximum's sliding back up a little bit.
right. If you go historically, it's cyclic like that. It does kind of go up and then down. And again, probably related to groundwater contamination, where you have, for lack of a better word, slugs moving around, and you may have a slug of contamination that is at a little higher concentration.
And rainfall, how much infiltration there
Right,
is.
there's all kinds of variables that are going to affect that. But historically, that has gone up and down that way if you plot the graph. I don't have a 103 graph here with me tonight.
So is that red, Roger, or is that 85? The red line?
The red line? No, that's a prohibition zone. Oh, that up there.
Prohibition zone.
That's
probably-
Gelman's 2017 plume map.
Estimation.
Let's see, anyways, that's the 85 parts per billion line as of 2017. And when they drew it, it was just below 85, so they moved the line away from it.
Right.
If they were drawing it today, they would have to include that,
Right.
show that it's down there. And Dan was saying that.
I is the one that is contaminated down there at about 10 ppb.
Yeah, and
8 to 10.
And again, that's 100 feet deeper.
Yeah.
And I think it's even a little higher now. I think in December, wasn't it?
I think it was 10. I don't, off the top of my
I
head.
haven't put that. I haven't plotted those yet. And
Yeah.
and the S for that one is actually shallower than the 103. But then again, the land surface probably falls away, so it's really the same aquifer. And that has been 1 and 2 parts per billion. And then the one that's surprising, we actually had a hit on this last year, 112D. That one's 207 feet deep. And that had a hit last year. So there's quite a range of dioxide moving through the city.
Okay, the next item that I had update is the Porter Street. I was informed that the Porter Street construction is completed internally in the building. So, and it's back online as of December 19th. Now, when we went out and took some pictures, yeah, there's landscaping. It's not pristine on the outside, and they will complete that in the spring when things can be landscaped. But the system, if you remember, they informed us, and I updated you, that they were shutting down parts of the system of pumping in the prohibition zone, parts of the pumping, because they were elevating the pump piping in that building. It was a low, had a lot of water in there, just surface water drainage And it was a little bit dangerous at some times when because it's electrical pumps and that type of thing. So they upgraded that and tied into new piping. So it is online again. The next bullet I had, as I informed you last month, is that they had a problem with their TW8, which is on the property. Pumping well TW8, they had the integrity of the screen was compromised. Basically, it broke open, stainless, and they had sand fill it in. So they had planned to replace that well. I was informed that they are. That is scheduled for this week. It may have already started or even been completed. They had given me a chance. They had said Monday they were going to try to start, giving me an option if I could step out there. I could not. I had some conflicts that I had to reconcile, so I couldn't go and identify that. But observe that, and it would just be an observation, just a confirmation for me.
Who was drilling that?
Stearns. Uh-oh.
They didn't get a permit. They didn't get a well permit.
Ooh, I never thought of that. I should have reminded them too.
I'll reach out to them.
I know, but I know that same.
Stearns and Gelman should know, so.
Yeah, you're right. I could have had it, for right now, I could have had a V8 Moban myself. Oh, yeah, I could, when they told me of the schedule or back a month ago, I could have said, don't forget to get your permits and all that. I did not. Sorry. I will try to remember.
No, you don't have
to
to
do
be
that.
sorry. It's not
Well,
your fault.
no, I know it's not my fault, but it's I like working. Why not work and make sure the county has good records, and then the responsible party. I'm not always banging on them with a sledgehammer. I mean, if I can help them out, I'm sure they are also didn't do that with malice, in my opinion. And they would much have preferred to gone through much have preferred to.
That's on tape.
Go through and have correct procedures done. I think they were most concentrated in, because I was on them. Hey, you need to get it replaced. It's a pumping well, and and they are doing some additional sampling prior to the installation, right at a couple of wells, monitoring wells around there, and after the installation, and they crank it back up again. That are outside the normal pump sampling schedule for that area. So I asked them to do some more wells. Just if it's down, let's see what if
We have
there's
to worry
any
about having
changes.
a quorum.
Really? I'm
Yeah.
starting to wonder.
And Bannister, city council member for First Ward, right?
Yes. With,
How many more city council
Can you
members
pay
do we
the
need?
Well,
Show up.
may I request?
Two more.
So you're going to have people sign in. Could I get a copy of that? Because I want to put names and faces.
Yes. Would you like that every
No, it's okay.
meeting, Dan, so that we
You
don't
can watch
have to
Roger's
ask
tape,
you?
too.
Yeah, I can,
some
but
celebrity.
it's a little tough to explain that when your boss comes in and says, "What are you doing?" I'm watching YouTube. Before I can get the name out of Gelman YouTube, it's like, okay.
Well, somebody can just go around with their phone and take pictures of everybody's face.
Okay, like I said, the replacement should be happening this week. I will confirm that it has happened and give you an update next month, about if any problems or just what went on for that replacement.
Now, in that area, as I recall, there aren't very many wells, borings that go down to bedrock.
Right.
Sorry.
Stay silent.
In fact, let's look at the deeper ones here.
Roger, I had, for those of you here, I had, in my talking with them when they identified that problem, I did voice that same concern. If you remember, I did request, saying it'd be a great opportunity if you guys are going in to do some additional vertical profiling and go down deeper there. You don't have a deep well. And it was, I made that suggestion, that request, if you want to call it, and they chose to just do the replacement right now.
Yeah.
And I asked them to sample some more wells. They did that, but the going to deeper than the current pumping well depth and vertically profiling, they chose not to do that at this time.
Does the DEQ have any action that they could impose on them to make them do that? If
It
somebody
gets real,
higher than
you know,
Maybe higher than you that said, I think this needs to go to bedrock.
well, the higher than me, how I understand it, because we talked about that with our AG and stuff.
Yeah.
We, talking with them about it, the only option that he identifies is we have to go to court. They're, they verbally, politely, I mean, it wasn't, you, Dan, you dummy, we're never gonna, no, I mean, we always, it was very business professional, we're just gonna replace the well at this time, and,
Well, it's a little unusual when it's in a court.
Right, it's a much more unique
Yeah.
situation for us. On other, if it was not in court and didn't have a CJ and how, driving on how do we regulate things, we would have, well, potentially we would have more cloud pressure that we could apply because of that. Now, just realize because of the CJ, one of the things is the CJ identifies compliance. On the western side, it's a non-expansion objective, okay? So they are in compliance. CJ identifies compliance wells. If they're above 85, then they're out of compliance. Well, they are not above that. So doing additional investigation with a lot of the borings, and they use this, there's a lot of information there. Doing additional investigation at this point, to them, it's not, not required and doesn't gather them additional information to get in compliance, to stay in compliance. So if that compliance issue changes, that objective changes, then we will have, additional.
Just so everybody knows, here are the wells that are 100 or 120 feet deep near the core site. The core site's here. We got NW52D, we got a few wells in the front lawn, one across the street, one over here in TW17, but there's no deep wells in the middle of the core area.
So why is it important to have a deep well there, Roger?
To know whether there's dioxin there or not.
How deep it is, because they haven't gone down the bedrock at the core.
Well, they might have gone down in some borings, but we don't have
Data.
those borings are not in the database, so we don't plot them. Now, I plotted them approximate, and then there's a few missing locations that we can do that with. But the point is, they're not whatever was sampled during the boring isn't necessarily what's there now. So we don't know how the dioxin is migrated, if it's migrated down there. And if we turn off the plumes that are shallower, because they do segment it by marsh area, we take away the marsh area is shallow, we take away the shallow plumes. These are the deep plumes.
Deep wells.
Deep plumes, the remaining red here. They're saying the deep is all off-site. But of course we know that wasn't historically the case, because they had deep, their own supply wells were in the E unit, and a couple of them had double and triple digit parts per billion back in the 80s. And those wells got plugged without being final sampled. We have no more deep wells to sample at the core area. So there could be contamination in the E here. We're seeing it here off-site in the Saginaw Forest. This is deep enough to be E. And again, it might be seeping down at an angle from the shallower, but it might also be that there's contamination of the E here, and we just don't know it.
Well, maybe the CART group should say that if this goes into court for discussion, that the DEQ specifically requests that they do a well to bedrock at the core site.
Well, I can tell you that we have those same thoughts.
Well, I'm just saying, I would like to, just have that, I don't know, what do you think?
Well, we've been asking for that
Yeah.
ever since they found the E unit, quote, found the E unit,
Yeah.
acknowledged the E unit.
I think we might.
And for a while, they were drilled in every well to bedrock, but now they've backed off on that.
Where's
They don't do that
127?
anymore.
Is that it right there, Roger?
What's that?
Is that one, right there, was it on 120, no, where's 127, right there?
It's
No,
right
that's-
in here, yeah, one of these.
Okay.
Well,
No, it's the one down to the left. Yeah, you took it out of this picture.
Oh, 127,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a deeper one there. So, I mean,
And that's
one
really
of the and that's a compliance monitoring well. One of the discussion points that they point out is, well, you know, we do have it down, you know, and it's a compliance point. It's within, you know, within what they had interpreted as a potential plume migration if it were to migrate. Again, they're doing a lot of pumping up on the property, and their argument is that pumping is affecting the groundwater flow, so it is not moving that direction significantly, and so that is one of the reasons, you know, they are, you know, they identify, if you want to say argue, their statement is that they do have some deep data there, 127 when they did that cluster, and that is a compliance monitor well, and and they are in compliance. What the other one that down there? Excuse me, I'll get to it's 120.
Nice.
Yeah, especially tonight. 128 is a little bit to the north from 127, and that's another deep well. So that's compliance work.
Does it go to the bedrock?
It did down.
But there's not one at the core
Not
that you're aware of?
Not a monitoring well.
not a monitoring well.
I think it would be good to say that the CAR group would like to see that happen. If there is a court discussion, that could be requested
Carr can
specifically.
take up a position on that when the time comes.
Yeah.
Well, just to have it out there.
Can't the Attorney General, the new Attorney General, request a conference in the case anytime?
It's one of
I
the,
don't. You're getting outside my she can. Pardon me. And I know we're in, you know, those negotiations. You know, so we're in negotiations with the company. That could be possible. They haven't,
City council
you know, the
members.
Attorney
Right.
General that I work with, the Assistant Attorney General, they haven't, as an Attorney General group, identified that. We're concentrating more
It's very
on the.
valuable information to have a well down the bedrock at the core, because then we would know at the deepest point of this aquifer, what is the current concentration, and that helps predict future migration of the plume and help people make decisions about what would be protective of the community.
Do you think you have a good estimate of the total volume of the dioxin?
no.
We pumped out, or they pumped out more than they said was down there.
And they quit making estimates after that.
It's been a long,
Twice.
that's a long time ago.
Oh, okay, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if that
If-
deep
for
well
it-
would help.
Well, for information, the current information, their quarterly reports, which I just got one, that was another one of my bullets, and the quarterly report I did in December, I go through what they do as part of the pumping part, how many million gallons they pump per the quarter, how many months I list, how many pumping wells were used, how many monitoring wells they sampled. It ranges from 60.
Yeah, they tell how much they've taken out.
Yeah,
They
and
just don't-
8 pounds are in each
But
of
we
the
don't,
reports.
no one knows how much is left, so
Right.
it's kind of a moot point.
And that calculation is strictly the concentration. It's a chemical equation. The concentration times the amount of water times, and you know, to come up with pounds of dioxane removed.
Right, it's a pretty simple
Yeah,
calculation.
and there is a running total, and they have taken out, you know, more than what originally, some of the statements early on, back in the 80s and 90s, some of the.
Well, they had a 89-90 estimate of 64,000 pounds. And then they upped that to 80,000 pounds,
88,
around 2000. And since then, they've taken out 114,000 pounds.
So,
So somewhere there's dioxin that they don't know how much is left. And I can see why they don't want to estimate it anywhere, because they were wrong twice before. They're going to be wrong again.
and again, I mean, they just realized too, I mean, they're looking at it, they have a consent judgment in a court. They are in compliance with that. Whether people like that or not.
Well, if
There's
They're-
negotiations going on now. So
The
this is
negotiations-
something that could come up in the negotiations. If city
Potentially.
council were predisposed to ask for that or suggest it.
Well, the consent judgment is clearly flawed, because it used to have cleanup standard of 3 parts per billion, and then overnight it got changed to 77 and then 85.
And the negotiations that are
Changing
currently,
it back down to 7.2 is taking years.
that is the confidential negotiations that are going on, is basically, as we've said, is implementing the new 7.2 criteria into that consent judgment.
Here, by the way, here are some of the borings or wells that they've had on various maps that we don't have information for, official information for, official XY information for. And some of these are pretty important wells. And I'll be touching on a couple of these later in my talk, my update.
Dan, when does the new director take over at the DEQ?
Already.
She's there right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I haven't met her. I mean, she sent an email out to all of us, but she's getting a team in place.
She's
and-
still appointing her.
her team,
lower
her
level, yeah.
her transition team, yeah. Basically, it's,
They're
you
looking
know.
for some people.
But, we still have Sue Leamy that has come to the CARD meetings is director for the DEQ. And the same people at Sue Leaming's down is in place that you've met for CARD. It's that and above, going above her. So.
Do you have any other updates?
I have a couple more bullets if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry I'm
Do
taking
as
too
much
long.
as you'd
Um,
like to share.
Let's see, Roger, I have some vertically profiling data on some of the GSI 98, 02, and 03 wells, so I'll get with you after to give you that information. You had asked me to, and I said, well, I've asked Gelman, and I asked again, and they sent it over to me, so I'll get with you afterwards, Roger.
Oh, so when you say vertical profiling, where they've actually done samples during the boring? and
Right,
did
it's
put it
not
on the
identified
well?
on the boring log.
Right.
But I specifically asked, okay, I know you guys said that you had done some vertical profiling with the, I forget what instrument they were using back then. And
Right.
These are 1998, and so they gave me that information. So I'll get it to you, Roger, here at the end of the evening. They have submitted their fourth quarter progress report. I'll start the process of, I got it today electronically, and their fourth quarter and the quarterly groundwater pumping spreadsheet. And I'll get that on on the webpage as soon as I can. Again, I send it off, and there is a person that has to make it ADA compliant or whatever, and then she puts it on. So that information will be up shortly. We are going to be doing some sampling of the Allen Creek drain in greater than what you had asked for and we had gotten in West Park. Evan Pratt asked us to come and talk about the Allen Creek drain in relationship to that 19 we found. It was 4 first and then 19. So he had asked us to do some additional sampling upgrade.
But CARD had also asked for
Yeah.
that as well.
But we are working with Evan. We generated a work plan. It's in draft form, internal review, and we are going to implement that sampling at strategic locations. I don't have a map yet because it's still in draft. Strategic locations for once a month for 6 months. Starting here, we want to do the first event in January. Now, I've also asked Gelman to do it. I said, we're going to be doing this. So, what I got back was they're receptive. They have said, let's see the work plan, let's talk about it. And they were receptive to go ahead and doing the physical sampling with their people.
And cover the cost.
Cover the cost, do the lab analytical, the dioxane analytical. We are proposing in our work plan not only to do dioxane, but a full scan. If you remember, I always did the full scan when I took in the Allen Creek.
That's great.
And Evan Pratt likes that too, because it's not only related, I'm not saying there's other contaminants related to Gelman, but it's
More bang for the buck.
it's the Allen Creek drain, and Evan has some responsibilities with MS4 permit. It's a permitted storm sewer type system. So we are going to, if that comes to fruition, we will oversee their sampling of it, the physical sampling. So I will be out there, someone will be out there. We will split samples with them too at selected locations. Or, well, we're going to ask them to do our work plan, which includes full scan. So they'd have to send, request that they do send it off to an external lab that they use. They've done that before. And but if it doesn't work out that they want to do the full scan, then we will do selective locations full scan, or we'll do the full scan with our lab when we split with them.
Because the extra cost of doing a full scan isn't that much.
No, it's a different method.
Mm-hmm.
Our lab, maybe a different method. With our lab, it is. They do 8260 sim, and I just got the chemist to see it, and then the full scan is just 8260. The sim stands for single ion monitoring. And I don't know whether the front part of that is the same in both methods. You're getting past.
So when you do these new samples, are they going to be different sample points than what you already have here?
Yes. I can give you an idea.
What kind of eye?
I could give you, like I said, I don't have and again, we did this with, let me get the right map. My scribble map, I think I have it on here. Yeah. Okay. I could pass this around.
Well,
there are several
what I wanna know
locations.
is-
Yes. If you look here, I can do this. If you look here, this is the prohibition zone. This is West Park right here. That's the one that has the 19 in it. We're going to be doing locations in manholes around that, with the idea that potential locations, as Evan had identified, that if there Evan had identified.
Man, you didn't smile for that.
He wasn't on camera.
I know.
So those are going to be in manholes.
Yes, they're going to be manholes.
So somebody has a map of all the manholes.
Yeah, we're going to be we have to work with the county. The city's going to have to give us access. We're going to be working with them, just like we did at West Park. So we're going to be that's why the work plan, and we're going to have a conference call, work plan implementation calls within a week.
That's all good, but you're working from a map of the manholes.
I got it a while ago,
Right.
before 9/11. So I got
Is that map available in electronic form?
Roger, Evan sent over just some bits and pieces of maps. The whole map of the city, I don't know. I have no idea. And we went out and field checked them, the manholes.
Yeah.
And there was multiple manholes. There's storms, sanitary, so we're going to be getting we're going to be asking for city assistance to basically open up the manholes.
Because all we have here are what's on the shared data portal on the city county. So these green lines here are the drains, but it doesn't show where the manholes are. It doesn't show
That's not,
any of the
not readily
offshoots.
available for security reasons, 9/11. Yes.
We will, our work plan,
Yeah, but
our work plan
they would
identifies
let me
that,
take a picture of it that one day I was in there.
No, they won't.
our work plan identifies, Roger, the XY coordinates will be part of the process.
So I have a question. So the last meeting discussed the sampling at Allen's Creek, and I had mentioned that the pond at West Park would be not worth testing because that is capturing. I was involved in West Park planning. The Allen's Creek group was part of a big effort to get stormwater management built into that park, and that's how they got the money, because it had included a lot of stormwater work. We were shovel ready with the Obama funds that were available. That pond captures water off of 7th Street. It doesn't capture water underground. So the pond is not worth testing, in my opinion. And the same thing.
We're not as part of this process.
Okay, so the other place that is another issue is, what's that little park across 7th is,
Wildwood,
no,
but it's off of Wildwood. It goes from Wildwood to.
The Hannah Nature Center
yeah, Hannah.
area?
I would not test the surface water at Hannah because after you did the testing, I went back in there, because I thought there was no open creek in that area, and actually you can see the concrete pipe.
Yeah, you can.
So the water goes through
And
this
it's not
pipe.
part of this.
The
This is
drain.
strictly
Okay.
Allen Creek drain. We're
Manholes.
accessing it from manholes. It was in conjunction with what
Okay.
Evan Pratt
That's
has
good.
said.
That's
But, you know, we looked at it to see if shallow groundwater may potentially impact, So we're gonna get some information and start and see where it takes us. Now, we did do the last surface water sampling. I did West Park Pond and that Hannah.
Yeah.
We may or may not do that in the future. People, you know, if
I don't think those two the ones I mentioned are not going to give you data about the groundwater.
groundwater venting to the surface.
Because that's all surface water locally draining,
But it's not,
eventually goes into the pipe, but
Right.
it's draining off the surface down.
it's not part of this work plan.
Whereas in our neighborhood, where you tested, that is probably has some groundwater mixed in with it, because it's part of the creek system, and it's an
Right.
open section of the creek. So,
Like I said, that we hope to implement the first event of 6 monthly events here in January.
This would be a good opportunity to point out that some people propose that we have a pipeline from the perch wells to the river. And just pump and dump,
to which part of the river?
down gradient.
Down, beyond Barton?
Like down here, yeah.
Beyond Barton?
Well, that's essentially what Prohibition Zone gave them, is a pipeline to the river,
Through the neighborhoods,
through the
through
neighborhoods.
basements.
And then through the drain. Because as the land surface falls away, some of that water gets collected in the drain and gets shunted to the river. So at what level can they discharge through the drain?
Well, Roger, you're now getting into the groundwater surface water interface compliance.
In the new
numbers.
standard.
The new standards, well,
280.
the new standards are 280 and 3.5. The 280 would be the typical compliance, you know, for a groundwater surface water
If the
interface. At a
prohibition
compliance
zone-
point.
If the-
Now, if 3.5 is related to is if the water, where the water goes, if it is a water source for drinking water,
Human consumption.
then it can be as low as 3.5.
Right. And if the judge were setting the Prohibition Zone value today, it might well be 280, because he based that on the 2800 back in the day.
Right, if the CJ is negotiated that way.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that that's part of the negotiation, is to reduce the Prohibition Zone value from 2800 to 280, but you don't have to answer that.
So Dan, I wanted to ask, the lame duck session, there were some legislation that seemed to change what Michigan could set as a standard versus what the federal government set as a standard. Has that impacted
How does
sites
that-
in Michigan
Or how does that impact this
or
site?
this site?
I can't answer how it can impact site specifically,
It's too soon.
but it can impact this site,
At some point.
yes.
It hasn't been
If
determined
you
yet.
followed, the DEQ did not agree with that,
Right.
Yes.
But it did pass, and it did
It
get
passed,
signed.
and it got signed. And
Okay.
if you, one of the things prior to that is, if you've been reading in the paper, the DEQ people in Lansing and Jackson signed a petition.
Yep.
And
I
so,
recognize some names on that petition.
yeah, I tried to do John Hancock, the big name, but,
Thanks to those guys. those
and,
people who
but it
signed.
passed, and so we don't know how
That's gonna impact.
how we're gonna regulate, how, it just, the answers aren't, you have to start getting specific
It just-
on how,
it just
it can change, you know, meaning that
So
it
this could go back to 85. This-
I don't think it would go back to 85. This is strictly my opinion, just what I know. I think it could elevate it because the assumptions for the equations that exposure risk
Yeah.
equations are a little different, how they're allowed to do. And it could elevate it, but I don't think it goes back.
Not much of a chance of that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Just off the cuff.
You know, that's just my preliminary evaluation. I am not, you know, I don't make those equations, I don't make that. That's our
Well, there was
toxicologist.
some write-ups in the paper that said it could go to 85, back up to 85. And
Again-
it wasn't anything, you know. assertive.
My interpretation was, oh, I don't think it can go back up that high. It could go up higher, but potentially, but just what I.
Go to 84.
You have any other updates, Dan?
One last thing is that I wanted to point out is that the Interstate Technology and Regulatory Council, ITRC, if you ever heard of it, has teams that they put together for different problems, like a PFAS team currently. There's a new PFAS team. Well, they've put together a 1,4-dioxane team, and I'm a member.
I'm on it too.
Are you? Were you on the call today?
No, because I was in Lansing. So I got
Uh,
the email saying, like yesterday.
Great.
Yes,
So this is, what's it, intergovernmental?
it's an
Intra-
Interstate Technology and Regulatory Council. And the 1,4-dioxane
Is
team.
it, when you say intergovernmental, it's different states or just within the state?
No, it's the country.
Well, the whole country?
Yeah, and a lot of, like, the 1,4-dioxane team is made up of a lot of state regulatory agencies,
Okay.
local
How
regulatory
many
agencies.
citizen representatives are on this?
They talked about that today in the call. I just don't remember off the top of my head. Most of it is regulatory people, but they have, information. And on the back there, it kind of tells you what the purpose, a couple-year team with the idea of coming up with some fact sheets and some on different topics related to dioxin.
Who put it together?
The ITRC, they have a bunch of them, a free product, NAPL team, they have a PFAS team. This is the first time I participate. I read a lot of they have a lot of good guidance documents that we utilize in the state as guidance, kind of how we want to do stuff in the state. So I just wanted to point that out, that looks like Jenny and I will be on that. It's a 2-year program, and it's monthly call once a month, and then there's several times a year that get together. Like I think they're in March up in Boston, there's the their national committee meetings.
What's the product going to do?
If you read on the back of that, it's going to be some guidance on 1,4-dioxane of all the way from fact sheets and guidance, all the way from risk communication through remediation technologies, through investigation techniques and analytical techniques, that type of thing.
Okay.
So,
That's great. It's great to have both of you on that. You both have experience.
Too bad we couldn't get somebody like Roger on it too.
well, I believe they have people, Roger,
The petition.
I'd have to be nominated.
no. Nope, you just
Petition.
go online.
Oh, and weigh in? I can just do comments.
No, we go online.
You go online, and it has
suggest
to
that you
be
would join it.
Yeah.
whether a member or
I
an
wanna stay
interested
married,
party, I
though.
think is another.
One more commitment, yes.
Yeah, one more commitment.
Oh, Lansing's a lot of fun. You haven't been there in a while.
All right.
That's all I had. Does anybody have any questions that I could
Uh,
answer?
I'm going to ask you these now because
Sure.
they were in part of mine. What decision support tools do you guys use?
When you mean decision to support tools, you asked me that in an email,
Right.
Do you mean like the technical tools that we utilize, like computer programs and that type of thing?
Yeah, all the stuff that you use to
I
make
mean,
your
we
decisions.
go,
Could you
you know,
kinda
if you
do an
want
overview
to,
of
as
it?
far as technical and computer, Kevin is really the holder of more of the computer programs that we use to evaluate geology, hydrogeology, groundwater contamination, and those types of things. I use monthly, our database is an Access database, so I can print and print off information from that, print graphs and stuff. The Access is an older program, so it's not as maybe detailed functional as I would like it, but again, I'm not going to write a new program to, we're utilizing that. I use everything from Excel, Excel and just in evaluations of, when I get the Excel files for the monthly reports, well, like I said, there's several objectives. The Western area's compliance, non-expansion objective with compliance points. So I look at those points through kind of grabbing them off of the Excel file that I get.
And then you have like a base map in front of you or something?
Yes, and then that. And then back to, I'm old enough that we didn't have all that stuff when I started my career, basically looking at data and, oh, it's on that map, it's not above, So we try to implement as much as we can, decrease the efficiency of observation and regulation with the programs. But again, we have for us to utilize that, the state has to have purchased the programs. Like I said, Kevin with Geological, and they have purchased and can work with many more programs than I have easily available at me. I just have the basic stuff, and that's what we have, Roger. So, nothing more detailed than that.
And in terms of your files, I should visit sometime and have you show me how your files are organized.
The files are one of the things that we are trying to work at some point in the future. The Jackson district is going electronic. Gelman has a big speed bump in front of us when you do that, because it's in court and all records, everything has to be kept. So most of the files now, the hard copy files, historic files are in place, and the other ones are just on computers, that we're
Going forward, it's all electronic.
Well, it's a part of them are on there, but it's not in the set. We have an electronic document manager program that all sites have to go into now.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to try to have any hard copy. Gelman is the exception. We haven't been able to manipulate it because of the requirements, because it's in court, and then also the volume of how to do this and the staff time that way to do that. Gelman has not been pushed into that system yet, but we're trying to get something. So things are electronic, but they're on computers, emails and stuff. They're not easily that someone from the outside, that's where they're trying to go, is where you do a FOIA, you maybe be able to go in eventually to an electronic.
So if you get an attachment from an email from Gelman, does it stay in the email system, or do you store that attachment in a proper location?
It stays in the email system, okay, for sure.
Stays attached.
Right.
Stays attached,
Okay.
but then I also put it in the hard copy.
Okay, a hard copy.
Yes, I also,
Okay.
see, I don't have, the structure of the electronic in our EDM system is not available for me yet for Gelman.
So-
It is super site-specific, so it's just Gelman the way it is, and we haven't sat down and developed a.
So if there's like a email that has a cross-section and an email that has a separate report that has some extra data, those two things aren't gonna necessarily, like the cross-section comes through, do you store it with the other cross-sections? Do you file it with the other cross-sections?
If, I've done where I put it in the hard copy that way.
So the
But-
cross-section file a hard copy,
Yes,
it goes into a
it
filing
records-
cabinet
Yeah,
that says
I've done it.
cross-sections or something.
Well, it doesn't say that, but,
Is it a
usually a
chronological
cross-section,
order?
it comes in as a correction or a supplement to some report. I put it in that.
And what order are they stored in? Are they just chronological order?
Yeah,
or-
chronological right now.
Okay, so it's similar to what Sybil is maintaining.
Absolutely. And I've just taken over for her and maintain it like she has said.
All
like
right,
she-
so that part's
she
the
taught me.
same. The difference is, we don't have an electronic list of those documents.
Right. Now, she taught me, I've updated the list, and that's where I haven't, my goal too is to update them. I think I updated it in 2018, middle of the year, is to get the rest of them. And again, whether that has each and every little attachment, no, we haven't done that.
Well, what she had was like a monthly summary that she would extract from her list that shows what the, here are the dozen reports or attachments or whatever that came in that month. And then in 2013, all that dried up.
Yes, and that's when, you know, there was hard copies being sent out or that way.
Right.
Yes, and she basically, again, when I took over in 2015, that was not implemented. I mean, we still implement that on a couple times a year, but not to the degree of monthly. Right or wrong, that's currently what I'm doing.
And that, which segues right into the next question, which is we've talked before about redoing the DEQ Gelman website. Because lay people looking at this, they have no idea where to look for latest information. You have things called list of recent documents sent to repositories, and the last entry is 2017. So these are the lists that Sybil was maintaining.
13.
2013, yeah.
Next down.
What did I say?
17.
Oh, 17.
Roger, punch on that April 26th one. Can you just open it up?
Oh, this one?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
to show what she said.
It's a PDF, and it has
Right.
links in it. So at the end, even though they weren't sending out electronic copies of everything, I mean, physical copies of everything, we did have the links to the electronic copies.
Right, and that links basically are to the webpage.
Right.
You know, so, and that, I do the same thing. I mean, I post them on the webpage. I just.
So here's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
See, these are all active links. In fact, I think you click on this, you could actually get to that document.
Right.
We don't have this anymore,
Okay, Roger, go back to the beginning.
right?
Go back one more. Go down all the way to the bottom.
Right? List
Right
of all
there.
documents?
Yeah, that's what I'm updating.
So this is through January 13th,
Yeah,
2017.
Yeah, see if that's true.
This is an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's an Excel, but it has links.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been updating to, and again, I haven't done, that hasn't been, because I post them on the webpage, I just haven't made a list
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
And I do that-
I'm not gonna bother to open this, but it looks very much like the other one. It's just
yeah, it's
long.
just an Excel, a different
Right.
little.
So you still maintain that, except it's not up to
It's not
date.
caught up, you know, for.
So that would be a nice thing to have.
Right, and really what we would do is put that other one up above, kind of in historic information, you know, what we're thinking above, you know, of.
Yeah,
A lot of these
monthly
line
things.
items, like you said, aren't for today, aren't really relative. I mean, it's good to have that information. So
Right.
they would be moved, not from front, but somewhere where it has historic information, and we just haven't come up with a format to.
Yeah, and then some of these others, like selected documents.
So Dan, when DEQ, are you currently actively trying to update the website, or did that get tabled for a little while?
That got tabled.
And when it comes back up, once you get the drafts going, can you get input from CARD before, and maybe we can review?
We
it?
have identified that we will
Okay.
be asking input. We made some promises, I believe, in meetings. Not only CARD, but I think maybe with the federal, with representatives, you know, with Congresswoman Dingell and stuff. I think that we made some commitments to get input to be a more efficient system. And then the local LUG group that was a couple of years ago, Local Unit of Governments, the LUG.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a terrible acronym guy, and then suddenly I spurt out an acronym and people go, what? So we made some commitments to do that, and the plan is once we get back that off the table again, moving forward, that we will be getting input. Because you are the clients,
The
if you want to
customers.
say, the
Yeah,
customers.
yeah, you really want to talk to your
And,
user
I
before
mean,
you.
it's great for me to have that data quickly, but it really helps me out when you have that data, or people have questions that can get to the, get the information themselves.
You can refer to the link.
I'll pass
This is I don't know when I did this, but I did a
I'm
little
okay.
critique of the website and put some comments in. And it
Yeah,
probably
and I
sent
have
this
that,
to you.
Roger, I think, yep.
Yeah, so I'm gonna look over
Yeah, I know, I
that
don't know,
over
and I was trying to, okay.
So I guess you say it's on hold to redo it?
Yes, we just, again, time, staff time to make that commitment. It's not just me, It's
Right.
the our web person, and she is just overwhelmed, and so it's still being rumbled. I mean, we bring it up every once in a while, but now with the new, it'll be a while because the new administration, as we find out how things, the new law, how things are to regulate on all sites, it just gets, I can't make any promises on things.
Yeah.
I remember at the charrette, they were, it was like one of the problems is there's so many different areas that we
Yep.
should be able to get, there should at least be a link to CARD maybe or
Yep.
SR or SW on here and somehow all together.
Truthfully, Washtenaw County
to
has the
Jenny's,
best,
yeah.
has the best webpage in the sense of
Yeah,
extra links.
exactly.
She gets to the card, SRSW, the DEQ. We have not done that on our page.
I like that.
And,
Yeah, and
Especially for residents and lay people and.
To see what's all available. But among all those groups that you just mentioned, it'd be great if everybody got together and did something that we all,
Link together.
well, I mean, that satisfies everybody's requirement for information on a webpage.
Right, and I'll cover a little bit more in my update about all the entities that have information where they control their information, but it relates to the Gelman site, and how to make that infrastructure work.
Do you want to go in your update?
One more thing for Dan was this model of, where am I here? I'd like DEQ to review their understanding of all the plumbing on the Gelman site. And that includes the plumbing in the building, where it exits, whether it goes to the septic fields, whether it went to the ponds for processed water, spray irrigation, deep well injection. There's a sewer line construction that intervened in the middle of all this that took out a monitoring well. And I want to know what that sewer line connection looks like and how it extends into the neighborhoods. And then, of course, you brought it up earlier, Dan, Bicknell Creek was named because there was a pipe that was venting, I think it was reverse osmosis wash water directly down this wash area into the marsh area of Third Sister Lake. And I don't know that pipe was ever mentioned in the complaint, but that's where Dan saw the contamination first going into
Coming
the
down the
lake.
hill.
That's when he first got suspicious, as I understand the
There's no creek,
story.
supposed to be no creek here.
It was supposed to be a spring-fed lake, and he
Only
saw a stream of water coming in.
coming down and these things, followed it up,
Yeah.
and it was a pipe coming out from the parking lot. And then he sampled that water and had a student do a mass spec on it and said, this peak shouldn't be there. And it's more samples.
Yeah, so anyway,
There's a movie coming out.
I have some, in the, from the EPA attachments, there's some different information there that just needs to be pulled together, and so I'd just like you to review if you have anything like that. And then from the images that I have, we can compare and make sure we have a complete picture, because where they're looking for dioxane may not be all the places they need to be looking. Like this one here, MW29 is one of those wells that was lost when they put in the sewer line. It says that right on it. It hit some pretty high concentrations, and it was pretty shallow. No more sampling there. That also happens to be the area where one of their septic fields was. It also happens to be the area where they did some spray irrigation. It also happens to be the area where the deep well was, all the piping for the deep well is right around there. So there's 3 potential sources for that dioxin. The piping that led to that. And that may be why they're showing this plume as being elongated, even though this is the only place that they still have a sample point for that little oval. It's because they know that was those 3 things. It was the septic field, it was spray irrigation, and it was the deep well injection point. So having an accurate picture of where the discharges could have been from, I think will help anybody who's doing shallow or near shallow sampling going forward. Because we've never got a complete picture of where all the piping was. So that's another ask I have.
Roger, and that reminds me of that whole Lockwood pushing and such of the potential development project.
Yeah, it's another issue. We're not going to discuss that today, but yeah, it's, just what we know and what we don't know. It's good to know what we don't know. Good to identify that and maybe try to tease out some information that's in some of the obscure reports that are hard to track down sometimes. All right, I'm just going to whip right through my stuff here because I've only got a few minutes left now. That was 15 minutes update for the first hour. But we covered a lot. And some of the stuff I was going
I
to...
believe, is meaningful information. I just want to keep you guys updated on it.
And it's key stuff. I'm going to try to zip through what I have here. Let me go back to I got these numbered so that you should be able to find them for 4A. So there was this incident at City Council where the City Council got an update from staff saying that here's a copy of the attachment from the city manager and public services administrator. I guess they gleaned this from DEQ reports to the US EPA. It said the highest level of dioxin from the monitoring wells was 1,800 parts per billion. They said between May and September of 2018. I looked at the data for that, and in fact, it wasn't 1,800, it was 8,200. A little bit higher.
Yeah.
Where did they get
I
their
was taking your
numbers?
word for it last night.
Well, actually, when I went to the meeting last night, I didn't get to talk, but I did talk to Chuck and Howard.
Chip.
Chip Smith.
Why Chip? Because environmental?
No, I didn't talk to Chip. I talked.
Chuck is no longer on city council.
Not Chuck. I'm talking about Chuck Helpy. Or
Craig.
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 Hoopy. Yeah, Craig
Helpy. I'm
Hoopy.
sorry.
Craig Hoopy?
Craig Helpy, yeah.
Well, we can call it Chuck.
Yeah.
Is that Matt's new?
The reason is, I used to have a guy, similar last name.
Now the position is not being filled. There's
That's
an
all right.
attorney, Matt,
Starts with C.
right?
so.
No,
Anyway, so Howard,
Please, Matt.
so they both said
Okay, there's
that
no Matt, not yet.
they recognize that there might be discrepancy in the data they're looking at, and they want to sit down and have a talk about it. So I expect an update soon. I did.
So those two put this memo together?
I don't know if they had staff help and they just signed off on it. I don't know.
Yes, probably, because Howard's the head administrator and Craig is his direct underling, and so yes.
Although there may be an issue with change in office because Matt retired and now they have a new environmental
Right,
person.
it's
And then hold
not
them
clearly
off.
not up to speed.
Well, what they did last night in the bylaws change is the environmental commission, which I thought was a substantive change, but it wasn't enough to trigger a halt. But they now, instead of reporting to the environmental coordinator, Matt Nod, they report to the Office of Sustainability Initiatives generally.
Dr. Missy Stokes.
Well, or whoever they
So
assign
who
from that
took Matt's
office.
position?
They have not.
Nobody.
They won't
So
be
Matt, so
recorded.
basically Missy is kind of up running a department now.
Yes,
Yeah.
Wow, Matt really did a lot of work, I guess.
and he worked for her. They just hired her
They have
over
a
the
whole office to
summer.
replace Matt.
Yeah.
All right, this is different than what I heard a week or
Well,
so
they're
ago.
misleading.
So there has been a transition.
Well,
may have
that
been-
was just happened to be an environmental commission bylaws thing, that doesn't maybe speak to this issue. But that was one of the changes that was pointed
I'm just making a
out.
point that there's been a transition and there may be a miscommunication or lack of knowledge.
And there are many, many issues that are hitting all at once in
Yep.
addition to having 4 new
Although,
council.
how many staff are in that?
4
There's 4 people.
right now, 4 plus.
Yeah, so there's 4 people doing Matt's job
Yeah, well, what I'm worried about,
And other
And they're
things.
and other things.
When they realigned in July, they realigned some of the administrative things under this OSI, they're calling it. And they could have picked a better acronym for those of us who remember acronyms. But be that as it may, they are taking on more tasks
I
than
see,
just
okay.
Matt did alone,
Okay,
supposedly.
okay.
So the concern I have is that this is a printed document that went to all the city council and it has a major
It should be
error in
changed,
it.
you know.
So
Yeah, I
I
didn't
think,
send out a corrected
I
one,
think
but
you
you
need,
did, right?
if you could send an email, if you have that information, see, I don't feel like I have the confidence to say it's 8,000.
I didn't go check it, I just
But
took
if
your
you-
word for it, read it off last night.
well, I sent it to everybody.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did send the email to
Everybody
everybody?
on council
Oh,
got that.
okay, okay, well, that's good.
First I sent it to Howard,
So then maybe
And
it
Craig,
needs to be
and
corrected at a next council.
kind of half
meeting.
expected a reply Monday morning. This was late Friday I sent it.
I mean.
When I didn't get a reply, then I forwarded
But
it
then
to all the
send it
city
in.
council
Thank
people and to Card Court.
And I responded and forwarded it to, and then Abigail Elias
Okay.
scolds me and slaps a big
Remember,
privilege.
we're being videoed.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. She puts a privileged and thank you. She puts a privileged and confidential on it, and so I can share with Kathy and Jeff, but basically, she thought I was being way too flippant to forward your email and requesting
You mean
response.
from your email, from your city council email?
To everyone else.
Yes, I
If
responded.
I sent it
thank
to you personally, that would have been fine.
No, I think I forwarded it.
This is news.
I'll show.
This email, the one that has the corrections.
The
Yes.
most important issue
Yeah.
is this is not an outlier in city business.
Well, I would suggest that whoever initiated this email that's in error should resubmit an email with a correction.
Yes.
Howard should correct his
Yeah,
statement,
yeah.
because that was submitted as part of the
Yeah.
So that-
communications from the administrator.
So it has some standing?
So it's in the record
It's in the
as
agenda?
incorrectly.
Right, right.
It has a
Yeah,
number,
I would-
it's very.
Can you
Thanks for
suggest
catching
that?
that, Raj.
It was
Well,
like ACQ.
here's what I think happened. I think staff looked at
Make a
this,
note.
and they looked at not the whole site, but they only looked at,
Well, then,
what they looked at was probably just a portion of the site, maybe what's in the prohibition zone.
I think what I can do is next week, or in 2 weeks, when the 22nd it is, because of the skip on the Monday, when the minutes come up, we can say, hey, I want to attach this to the minutes. And it can get
Right.
attached to the
Good.
AC.
That would be good,
Two.
you're the card member,
As
so.
an
Get it in
attachment.
the official record.
Yeah,
That's
but I
very-
think correction, I don't think Howard would have a problem with
I think
that.
Howard should resubmit.
Yeah, he may do that instead.
Because everybody who got
So-
this email in error should get a corrected email.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll
We
ask
don't
Howard if
know
he'd rather do
what,
that
you
or
know,
have the
what
attached a
repercussions
corrected
are
way.
maybe.
Okay, so the value, the 1800 value is one thing. The other thing was
Uh-oh.
that the wording says something to the effect of,
Well, it was 1,800 and then 18,000.
the highest, and while other locations had non-detect levels, implying like all other locations had non-detect. And of course, I corrected them on that too, saying no, a majority of the other locations had not, above detect. You know, so it's not just one big spike and a whole bunch of non-detects, it's a gradual thing. And the fact that no one caught that just by reading it, they didn't understand that, yeah, I mean, when I see 1,800, I say, well, that's really low. you know.
There's not a dioxane problem in Ann Arbor, is what
Roger,
people would
Roger.
think if they
didn't
read
read your
that.
book, you know. that's-
Well, but
No, you're absolutely right.
if somebody
Yeah.
really understands this issue,
Right.
they would spot that 1,800 and say, I think you left off a zero.
So I'd like to know who on city staff is now going to be the 1,4-dioxane, you know,
Watcher.
go-to person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, should we sit down with them?
Well, okay, here's what happened after the meeting. I left early, because I wasn't gonna stick around.
City council meeting?
City council meeting, yeah.
Okay.
And Howard ran out and caught me in the hallway, and we talked.
Mm-hmm.
No, he was all cordial. And part of that, I offered to update whoever's taking over Matt's duties. You know, spend my 3 or 4 hours with them like I do with any new person, like I did with Dan when he first came on board, and like I did with Kim Davis when he took over the cleanup for Chuck Gelman.
And Roger charges a lot for that.
I should.
You should.
You know, they say if you have to pay for information, you respect it more. But,
We hire consultants.
That's right.
anyway, so I offered to do that because what I don't want is somebody making decisions without adequate information.
Yes.
Right.
Bad things can happen. We've seen that time and time again. The other thing I talked to him about, and it's in the email, is to build on what Governor Whitmer, her first proclamation, her first directive, was to staff to say, if you see something that's a hazard to health and welfare, escalate it. Don't let it fester. Don't let it be blocked by, you know, a middle manager. Make sure it gets escalated to be taken care of. And if all local governments did that now, it'd be really timely. So that staff knows, you know, the government issue is a big deal. It's going to be here for many, many decades. Anything that touches on it at all, you might want to pay a little bit more attention to it. And that's all it is. It's just a little tweak. But to make policy like that would, I think, go a long way to helping us get the information flowing laterally that's not flowing now as much as it should. So
I agree.
that was one of my main points today.
That's great.
Thanks for writing that up, Roger.
Doing that.
Yeah, and how I found out about it was on Twitter.
Oh, no.
It was one of the people that regularly go to council meetings, and he happened to spot it and tweeted about it. Otherwise, you know, I'm not watching this.
I pulled it up on Friday when the agenda came out and saw it, and I sent it to you.
I did see yours later, but I'd already started working on it before that.
This doesn't seem right, but I don't know the numbers like you know them.
Yeah, but it's good that, you know, people,
Keep an eye out.
at least citizens were doing these alert things that maybe staff could be doing without having to rely on
was it?
citizens to fill in.
Who was it?
Who
On
was it?
Twitter.
Who was it that alerted me?
Yeah.
It's in the Twitter feed. If you look for dioxane, you'll see it.
I don't have Twitter anymore.
You really want to know who it was?
I was just curious. Is it Matt Nolan?
It's probably one of your troublemakers.
It's probably Matt Nolan. He's on Twitter now.
No, it wasn't Matt. No, it was Kai, by the way.
Oh,
Oh.
That's okay.
he's got
Kai
too
pays
much time on his
attention to all that
hands.
stuff.
He's reading the stuff before us.
Yeah. Anyway,
I am gonna leave now, we have a board meeting. so-
Yes.
See you guys later.
well, I got my point that you need to
From one
carry with
user.
about making this a policy decision.
And Vince,
Wish me luck on that one.
Yeah, you can talk about your other issue.
We'll check back with you, California.
Vince, I don't know if it's been updated, but we were told Ryan Steglitz is the point of contact now for dioxane regulate
Who's the
related.
point person?
Brian Steglitz.
Now, he's the head of the water.
Wastewater treatment.
Wastewater, or
No,
water.
he's a water treatment.
Really?
Yeah.
We were told to
Really?
contact him with 1,4-dioxane.
Really?
Right, and that's who Howard said too, and
Toxicology.
That's important for the minutes.
They had him up there at the
Talking about Brian
HRWC.
Steglitz?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was at the HRWC PFAS, you know, at the Washtenaw Community College also.
Well, I would think Missy Stoltz, Dr. Stoltz would be involved. She's got a degree, PhD in sustainability.
Yeah.
But you may
Isn't
delegate
Isn't she,
the point person.
well, her office at least.
Should
Should
be
be
the
able-
most first choice, I would think the first choice.
I don't think the water treatment plant person is appropriate. That's just my opinion.
Why do you, I'm curious why you say that.
He's got a lot of other things going on.
Right, this is not gonna
This is
be,
groundwater. This is not,
He has good
Surface
staff,
water.
though.
yeah.
well, if they're funded well, then that's fine.
It might be an access opportunity kind of thing where we have more of a chance to have the issue moved in.
He may have a bigger budget, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's any harm in having somebody as a point person, but to have maybe 2 or 3 other people who
Partner.
are up to date on it, so
Yeah.
that if
Partner
he's,
with them, yeah. They kind of work together.
yeah, I think, maybe across departments even if there's,
This is a very complicated situation, and, you know, I think you need people who are knowledgeable about a lot of things, toxicology, hydrology.
Right.
I mean, you know,
Geology.
Dan knows.
Well,
It's very
one thing with
complicated.
the water treatment, you know, is that when we're getting ready to do the new, upgrade our facility,
Yep,
and of
yep.
course, we have the cryptosporidium requirements, you have the lead and copper rules, we got a lot of water
PFAS,
issues. Yeah, PFAS. But, you know, they're doing drawings right now for UV treatment. And
For 1,4-dioxane.
no, for the cryptosporidium requirements.
Oh, I see.
And so, because we gotta get that last 100th out
Yeah,
occasionally.
Right, right.
And, you know, one of my questions last night was, around the water rates issue is this a robust system that you're putting in place that's gonna be part of the header for dioxin removal? And of course, Howard's concern was that he wanted to get on the mic, and rightly so, I suppose, reassure everyone at home that dioxin isn't in our drinking water. But, you know, we're talking about long-term planning here.
Yeah.
They wanna increase our rate 6% a year for the next 12 years. We're talking, you know, we're talking about 25-year, so if you're putting a multi-million-dollar UV treatment room onto our facility, make sure it's the lead up for something in the future if we need it.
If it's a double duty
Yes.
mechanism.
Yeah,
UV
exactly.
light is a common.
Because it'll be infrequently
Yeah.
used for the cryptosporidium, it's only when we test up and are required. But we have to have it in place.
But that'll be-
So there's an opportunity to prepare for
Sure.
eventualities.
That's a good point.
you know.
They might as well make
So
it.
that'd be
make it available.
unmistakable, you know.
And Vince, there's a woman that works out there now who has a PhD who's very impressive. And
Who's that?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
it Molly?
What's her name?
She gave
Molly
us.
Majeweski.
No, that's
That's-
a wheel.
Whatever. I
But
guess.
anyway,
Yeah.
I talked to her after the tour, and I was very impressed, and I would think that she would have the best grasp.
She's a new water
of
quality
anything.
something or other. I don't remember what her name was.
This is a really oddball situation for the city staff because it covers so much material, you know,
Right.
so many fields you have to know something about. And it could be very impactful to the city if this does get into Barton. And unfortunately, I heard city staff say, you know, hey, it's going to Barton. And I'm like, what? It's going to Barton, you know. So I'm not gonna say who that was, but it was really sad to hear that.
I mean, when you have the Rayle, when you have the Allen Creek overlays on there, you know, like we were just looking at, and that makes you think not, you know?
I know. When
It
you
gives
see
the
the pipeline, like-
impression that it's gonna take it south and nobody wants to go through the Cascades anymore.
Well, there
you know?
was an MSU study that looked at existing wells, and their analysis indicated that there was a bifurcation going on.
Yeah,
right up here. This is the part we're
right,
concerned
I
about.
recall that, yeah.
So, and this plume is going every which way.
Right,
So, yeah, the notion that Gelman has presented is it's going to follow the, their model, which shows it going through the city to the river. My cousin is a geologist, does water quality stuff on the East Coast. He looked at the maps and he said, you know, Vince, you know, just looking at the topography, which is commonly used as a way to judge groundwater flows, he says, I would agree, there is a bifurcation going on here. You know, he didn't study it, we spent about 3 hours on it. But, I think, and Larry Lemke talked about his modeling. Now, he'd like to have done a lot more modeling, he didn't have the money to do that because he's got, you know, grant issues, you know, he has to get money through grants. So Larry, you know, was like, hey, it's probably already in the Allen's Creek, he was right on that. Probably already in basements, probably already in the Barton Pond, already in the river.
Well, it's in Barton Pond only because they're dumping it into the tributary Honey Creek.
Right.
It's not gone there
For the
directly.
folks at home, you got our intake on
And then
there? Can you show
and
the
then
intake?
DEQ comment at the town hall meeting was Barton Pond has a natural blocking agent. There's all that water pressure keeping 1,4-dioxane out. A week later, at a CARD meeting, I asked Larry Lemke straight up, I said, Larry, what do you think about Bob Wagner's comment? Who's the
Right,
hydrologist
right.
for the DEQ?
And Larry submitted a,
Larry said that's not even close, because actually, once it gets past M14, it's a downhill run
right.
into an ancient creek
Yeah,
bed.
let's not get hung
It's
up
gonna
on that,
go
because I got a
into-
couple more things
Okay,
here.
go ahead.
Just quickly, Matt used to be a member of CARD. Does it make sense to have a member of the city staff
Yes.
attend
Oh,
these meetings in the
yes,
future?
please.
Okay, I'll take that.
I lobbied for that with Howard.
Thank
to have
you.
Okay.
That would be
Max
okay.
replacement here, but he's not here.
Kind of
today,
lost
so.
that in the discussion. Thank you.
And maybe Missy Stoltz, somebody from her office.
Yeah, I would hope to see a staff person here at every CARD meeting.
Don't make me shame them.
So this leads into my big goal for this year is to pull together all the information, so that, part of what we just discussed with the website, the DEQ website. I also have my own sets of information that I'm going to be adjusting, let's put it that way. Just here. So here's an image of all the folders that I keep on my main computer. And of course, some of these have subfolders, so I want to offload some of this stuff to a card. A lot of this stuff is already out on the internet, on Google Drive, but I want to expand the cards holdings of this so that, and then teach stakeholders how to get to it, so that the Howard memo issue doesn't happen again. They can get to the latest information. And more information than even what's in the official database to really understand what's going on. Similar to that, I've got information on how to use, I want to start having workshops on how to use the Google Earth mashups. So these are all the kinds of images that can be generated with Google Earth, if you know how, from the mashups that I have. And I want to have some workshops to teach people how to use this to explain what's going on and have a better understanding even of themselves.
Maybe you could piggyback on a bunch of Dr. Missy Stoltz's sustainability workshops in 2019.
Maybe, yeah.
And also her $10,000 grants.
Yeah, how about
Yeah.
it?
Sustaining Ann
grant.
Arbor
I want to
Together
do that in my
grants.
neighborhood. I don't know.
There is a Sustaining Ann
There's a
Arbor
bunch of
grants.
Like one of the things I can do on Google Earth is I've been painstakingly recreated all the cross-section paths that were available for this site. It took a long time, there's scores of them. So that when there's an issue like Lockwood, I can show what the existing cross-sections were from different people doing it over different years, and show that the understanding of it changed as they got more details. So you don't just end up with a simplistic straight line cross-section, you can actually see what other, so at the Lockwood planning meeting the other week, the person from the city was saying, well, Rayle obviously drew these cross-section diagrams. No, I didn't draw them. All I did was take those images and overlay them on each other so you can see the differences. And I don't think he understood that. And so one of my tasks is to, I've got a set of images ready to go to sit down and either show them in person or with a PowerPoint or something. Here's the image, here's where it came from, here's what it means for infiltration. You can actually see pathways that you couldn't see before.
So Roger, have you seen other people do mashups like what you do? Is that readily done by others that you're aware
It's
of?
usually like 1 or 2 layers.
Yeah.
They don't have these, I've got, a dozen layers, maybe more. And some of them are publicly available information. Others, I have to create like the, unfortunately, the DEQ can't force the company to submit their plume maps already geocoded. So every one of those outlines, I had to trace. Where if there was geocoded, I'd just take that layer, pop it in, it's there.
That'd be too easy.
That'd be too easy. So I don't know if we need a law change, to.
Well, it's being driven by the CJ.
Right.
And
Well,
the
that's-
description of the CJ,
Yeah.
the progress reports is a very brief summary type progress report.
They didn't
And-
have any idea that Google Earth
Right.
would be
So,
here 10 years later.
Again, they are in compliance with that very general
Yeah.
description of a progress
It's
report.
another reason to get rid of the CJ and get the EPA in and do it right.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's part of that.
I haven't
Let's see
been,
what
I
else.
just, for me to catch up with everything in the CJ and all the requests and all the information I've been charged with having to go sit in their office and not take any documents out. So I have to go schedule myself a couple hours.
Whose office?
The city attorney's offices for me to come up to speed fully on how I wish to on that.
It's online. We have it from the EPA.
Well, no, I mean, what's going on now?
Oh,
Oh,
And so when
I
we
see.
talk about things in the consent judgment, I don't know what they are or what they should be yet.
Well, the current consent judgment is online.
Right.
So
I mean,
what's being
what you're talking about,
I'm
what you're
talking
talking
about,
about
yes,
is the
current.
the current, anything related to the current negotiations is,
Yes.
well, there is a agreement of a non-disclosure.
I'm now part of that, and so I have to go sit in the office and read it all, so. I couldn't comment anyway, but.
Yeah.
And that's why
I'm not
always
sure you
say
can
I
even
can't
tell us
really-
that.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can tell us that. That's what I'm saying.
I gotta go read it in the
Tell
office?
us more.
Well, I mean,
But you
I
actually
haven't yet.
And that disclosure agreement, as I think we gave a copy out to the
Yeah.
card, I mean, it is signed by everybody involved in the interveners, the
I mean,
DEQ.
I think
the
I'm
Gelman.
under it by proxy. you might
Well,
say.
yeah, I'm not saying that, but it is and registered with the court, it's identified in the court, so.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on this thing too, that the non-disclosure applies to all the parties in the court case. And if their understanding of the reality of the data is anything like that city manager, city administrator memo to the council, I'm really worried about negotiations.
right.
Because if that's the level of understanding, and these negotiations are done in secret, really bad things could be happening. Really bad things. And I hope that enough people in the negotiations speak up when bad information is passed along.
I think the council should recommend that CARD be referenced or be tapped into as a knowledgeable, I mean, Scioto Township and Ann Arbor Township have thought of CARD as being a resource.
Yeah,
The
but
commission, that's like our boards and commissions.
Mm-hmm.
right, but, yeah, and the way to do that is just their resolutions to support CARD. So the way is to reaffirm those resolutions. Because they're already resolutions, just reaffirm them. And that would be enough to validate CARD. Because there's some movement to have another group that's going to supersede CARD and let CARD atrophy away.
This is at the county?
It's the municipal and agency group that is.
Oh, that's completely separate. That's not, what? There's no other county group. The municipal and agency group is a completely separate group that's not me.
Right,
But they're
it's-
not to
But it was
replace
set
CAR.
up mainly to interface with the EPA representative.
Well, you know, I found myself appointed to something called the Washtenaw Metro Alliance. And I have no, yeah, exactly. And so I looked, they hadn't met in 6 years. Nobody knows what it is.
What's their budget?
Yeah, well, that's my next question.
That might be why they have zero.
Well, I talked to Sue Shink about it, and we were floating some tree ideas around, but, you know, it's what, maybe it's what we make of it. is all I'm
Anyway,
saying.
so getting back to the information, here are all the different entities I brainstormed that are involved with the Gelman issue. And what I've challenged people here at the CART meeting to do is to think about their own entity and what information they have relating to Gelman and what information from these other entities they rely on to understand the Gelman situation. So at some point, I want to see all of the lines of information between these entities so that you could click on it and say, okay, this is where this is stored, and this is how to get to it, and here's the link to it. So this is just a schematic to start with. So, you know, sometime in the next several months, I'd like to see this filled out more. You know, by taking a copy of it and then drawing lines for each entity to say this is what's going on, and then eventually we can see the whole network of things and identify, instead of having redundancy of who stores which information and is that the latest copy and this and that, we identify where the official copy of the database is and where the official set of well logs are and where the official set of cross sections are and where the resolutions are, you know, basically nail down some of these important clusters of information so that we're not reinventing the wheel, and we know as a stakeholder, I could go to this place and know that I'm going to get the best information, up to date, accurate, and reliable. And so that's my goal is to.
That'd be a Sustaining Ann Arbor Together grant.
There you go.
$10,000.
But then the money would have to be, you know, we'd have to identify how the money was gonna be spent. So you'd have to say, hey, here's a hypothetical
Well-
site map, are we gonna hire a company to do it, some
Right.
grad students to do it, some kind of situation where.
I think
we have actual
U of M is
volume.
on here, UMich,
And
there you go, right there.
Yeah.
I got the email from Missy
Right.
about the grant, because I'm the neighborhood person, sitting over the high plume, maybe we could do it in our neighborhood.
Yeah,
the idea is that it's
they
shuffled
want to
Yeah.
give money out. It's a
But I
new
don't know.
program.
Yeah.
They wanna send it out sort of to neighborhoods, like one of them went to the North Side School neighborhood, but it's really being implemented by the school, it's about a solar energy thing.
Yeah, or Monarch.
And then last year was
Garden.
Yeah, the monarchs are
composting,
doing
year-round
it, so-
composting.
No, I
in
want
the
to make a
fifth ward.
Monarch garden,
Oh, I heard they're
but
doing,
if it's something with the plume.
sorry.
Yeah, because we're talking about PFAS.
Yeah.
There's scores of PFAS sites popping up all over. Those are all potential little Gelman sites.
Yes.
Because PFAS acts very much like dioxin in groundwater. They're gonna have
More
the same
toxic.
community involvement issues, they're gonna have the same intergovernmental issues.
Groundwater issues.
If
I've
only,
installed some
if
very
only
nice
we,
filter systems.
so, one of the things we could do is say that this dioxin site's gonna be here forever, or in our lifetimes anyway. We should take this as an opportunity to learn how to deal with sites like this and be the model for how to deal with it. And not agonize over, you know, how we're ever gonna solve this problem. We can solve it, we're Michiganders, we can do anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got a world-class university right here.
Right.
So that's gonna be my message to Mark when I see him again.
Well, is the U, why are they not as concerned about?
Running on the back of my pilot.
Now,
Well-
we have a meeting coming up with the
These
new
university really
Jim
needs.
Kostiva, which is the community
aren't gonna wanna come.
liaison.
Yeah, Jim's gone, so who's the new
Jim's gone, the
guy?
new guys are like Mike Rain,
I don't know him.
REIN.
R-E-I-N, and he's in the Fleming building. And he's just starting to reach out to the community to schedule meetings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
could be a
I saw that, but
big
I-
impact on the university. If people go do a Google search about Ann Arbor
And find
and
out.
say, hey, I'm not sending my kids to Ann Arbor.
Well, that's why they didn't want to do a super budget, which is totally
That's-
counter.
Yep.
Here's the counter to that. Here's the counter to that. I've been thinking about this last couple of days. Because there's a couple of people said, well, you know, if this, you know, people from the East Coast, they're going to send it there because there's
And West
contamination.
Coast.
Or any place. But, to counter that, you say, yes, but we at this world-class university also taught the person who discovered this. And we also taught the person who escalated the water crisis, Dr. Monahan, a teacher. One of Rita's former students. This is the kind of university this is, to solve problems and not sweep them under the rug.
But that's what I mean, why aren't they in the forefront of helping solve
Well,
this?
I think that there's some light on that horizon, because my understanding is that with sustainability efforts and some other, Planet Blue and all that, that we're really trying to work much more closely with the U.
Well, I think City Hall has some clout with the university. Past city councils were reluctant to pressure the university, in my opinion.
I'm
I'm
not
actually-
at all.
Well,
I'm
no, I
bringing
think
a pilot
previous.
program
Yeah.
I think
forward in the
now there's a
spring.
different attitude on council that we want to partner with the university. We don't want to be, beholden to the university. So
Yeah.
I think that could make a big difference. And plus, we have a new Democratic governor and change in the DEQ. So things are changing, and we can tap into that change, I think. And the university does have a lot of potential resources and ability, and they're in it up to their neck, like we
Yeah,
are.
I think the president is committed, he just doesn't have the structure or framework to take action.
Well, they need to form that
I
structure.
know, and we can help them. And Roger, I'd call Mike and just introduce yourself as the card chair, because he's relatively new and he's looking for people.
Yeah, and Jim knows, I've talked to Jim about this issue before.
Jim Kostiva?
Yeah.
He's retired.
But he's gone now.
Right, so I can,
Or Sue Gott. Sue Gott's another one you could talk to. I've talked to her.
and then, of course, all the regents that I know.
Yes, the regions, and Peter
Over
Allen.
those martinis, you get a lot done.
Roger, you want to conclude on your items?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
10 after.
Yeah, we gotta get going here. Let's see, so information structure, so the direct, I think I covered everything.
Okay.
Oh, then the VOCs and SVOCs, this is a 5-minute thing that Dan Bicknell had a follow-up email to Dan Hamill about the VOCs and SVOCs on the Gelman site.
Volatile organic
242.
compounds, VOC,
Yeah, and
solvents,
so
TCE.
I think everybody got a copy of that email when it was sent out. So here's
When they
these
talk
different
about
summaries.
vapor intrusion, these are normally part of that. They evaporate, get into the basement, get into the building. They have very high vapor.
So Dan goes through, where there were some found in the past and there hasn't been any samples since. And there should be, and
Especially the church with the children in there.
yeah, that too. So there's a couple different sets of information here. And I think we had a preliminary response from the DEQ back in October, but this is more of a follow-up. And here's the email, the latest one, the attachments. And in tied in with that, there's a boring, not a monitor well, but there was a boring made back in 2004. PLS 0401. So it's right here where there's, between pond 1, pond 2, pond 3, and near MW5D, it's the highest contamination.
Where's the church on that map?
The church is down here.
Lower, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, right there.
Okay.
But the reason this caught my eye is because, I gotta pull up the right pin here.
I'm sure he does.
Let's see.
Better when it's right side up.
Getting late.
I wasn't even noticing.
In well logs, a lot of the well logs that Gelman produces, there's this column called PID, parts per million. And this seems to be the only well log that has information filled in on that. Of all the hundreds of well logs, this is the only one I could find that actually has some values in there. So here we got like, what, 616 parts per billion. Now what that shows, according to Dan Bicknell, is that that's a volatile. There's some volatiles there, we don't know what it is, but it's 60 feet down, 616 parts per billion.
Any guess what PID means?
Photoionization detector.
Yeah, it's just the method of doing it. But what's curious is
Detecting
that,
what is that used to detect?
To detect volatile organic compounds.
yeah,
Oh, it is.
And it
So that's
detects it
specific.
by exciting the compound and molecules using UV light.
Okay.
And then what they lift off and they go across the ionization detector like a smoke
Like
detector?
a detector, yep, and then it's picked up. The number you're seeing there is a total volatiles. You cannot easily.
you don't know what it
They're
is.
not
What
separated out as
individuals, is it
anything.
dioxane, is it TCE, is it, so just realize it is used in the field when you do borings like this and wells to get a general idea of where potential contamination could be located in soils.
So here's, if you go down deeper at that well, there's 9 parts per billion in that column, and then they also put a temporary well in to sample for dioxane and found 9 parts per billion. Oh, so that matches up pretty good. It looks like all of this is dioxane.
Well, probably it's not all dioxane because dioxane doesn't show up well. It's a simple volatile.
Right, dioxane doesn't volatilize readily that it's going to be read with that. It's probably
So there's a
something
bunch of
else.
other stuff.
I also want to point
So
out.
this 9 part per billion could be some other compound.
Yes, could be in everything. I also want to point out is once you get below the water table, the PID really starts having, in my opinion, I've used them for 30 years, problems because the water, the moisture plays havoc with the detector, with the mirror, the glass stuff in there. So although you still do it,
With a grain of salt.
yeah, you still do it. It is just a line of information that says, suddenly if you had a huge number, okay, we need to look at that, even with the problems under.
So these aren't huge numbers here, then?
No, that's not huge numbers related
About the
to.
600?
If you're below the water table, in which you are.
Yeah.
If it's a wet sample, does it say wet? Yeah, look on the left, it says wet. It is basically what they did was, it's measuring, they took the soil sample, the geologic sample, and they put it, what we do, put it in a jar, plastic bag, and you hit scan it. And once you get wet, it really is problematic. It's the dry soils that you can get a real good estimate on what residual is there.
If they volatilize.
If they volatilize. And let me also, so you guys get the whole picture. The PID has several different lamps. So, meaning that it excites the ions by several different, there's a 10.5 lamp, an 11.0 lamp. What that means is the energy that it bangs on the ion. So some compounds only read in the 11.0 volt lamp. Some will read on the 10.5. So it's a screening tool in the field. Mm-hmm. So watch putting too much, hey, it's there and it's a risk. You need other lines of evidence, and again, that's why a lot of times they did vertical profiling of the groundwater. That may give you an indication where to go ahead and do that, but the vertical profiling where you have a laboratory sample analysis of water is more of a line of evidence that's stronger.
So an order of magnitude difference between dioxane and this doesn't really prove anything.
Right,
About the
because
600 number though, that he's,
again, it was I think it was below water table.
but that's a high number.
Yes, it is. But
You don't think that that's a concern?
well,
616?
okay, you guys.
That's a shallower.
Shallower,
Yeah.
it's still 60 feet, it's still below the water table. But again, realize you're doing total organics.
Okay.
So you don't know exactly what that really means. And then, and again, moisture, in my 30 years of experience, moisture always used to
Could it
kick
be
us.
naturally occurring compound, or is it all synthetic?
It can be a naturally occurring, you can get some volatilization, naturally occurring degradation of natural hydrocarbons, depending on peat and stuff like that.
Right.
So, I mean, just realize it's a field screening tool.
yeah.
It's one of the tools that we can use.
Okay.
Especially when you look at that written description of what they were pulling out of there.
Right, grayish brown.
Yeah, grayish brown, moderately wet, it could be, like you're saying, it could be any kind of funk down there.
So,
Now,
Dirt.
Yeah,
right above it, it says moist.
Yeah.
mhm.
You have to go all the way up to the surface pretty much to see anything dry. But to me, that, because of the location of this, right in the middle of where all this stuff was dumped.
Yeah, it says there's some volatile chemicals down there.
Right.
And it'd be nice to know what they are.
Yeah, so maybe sample there sometime.
Yeah.
Well, what about inside the church building? Have they?
Well, this isn't even right next to the church, but
Right.
if you're gonna start someplace, here's where we have some indication from the PID value, even though it might be faulty. And we have the indication from its location that it's right in the heart of where you expect to see this kind of stuff.
Well,
And yet we have no data at that elevation.
Well, the state now is including vapor intrusion as a monitoring.
Another reason to do it.
Yeah.
So
Which they've
to
adopted.
dismiss it out of hand is maybe not the best thing to do. I would like to, if anything, if this is gonna come up, and if you do a sample in the water and you find that there's nothing, then that might really help with all the other concerns of the church area and everything else. To not do it here makes it look like, well, they just really don't want to look there. Really don't want to look there because it might open up a can of worms.
And so I want to clarify some information that was sent out in that document, the same one that everyone received. So I don't know, Roger, if you can go back to the email that you just had up. There were some figures that were attached.
Which email?
From Dan Bicknell?
Yep, from the Dan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so if we scroll back up. Okay, this map here. So in the top left, there's right there for Stony Creek Preschool, he had some information on VOCs that were collected in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
There's more history here. So there's two sets of samples taken in 2012, and the values that he is referencing are the ones that were taken first when a new well was drilled on the site. So for historic record, it's a preschool, it's on a well. They are required, based on their population, to be they're a regulated type 2 well, and they have to take VOC samples. So routinely when new wells are drilled, we have PVC casing now. The casing isn't 100 feet long. They have to glue pieces together and the lengths together, and that glue is known to have VOCs in it. So many times when we have a new well drilled, if you take VOCs right away, you're going to get hits. They drilled a new well, yep, from the glue.
And the PVC cement?
Yeah, the glue, yep. Or yeah.
Sniff the
You've
one
used
that's-
All the time.
Your brain is being.
Private
They
and
dissipate
glue it, you know?
relatively quickly. So for background, the original well was 22 feet deep. The new well is 118 feet deep, and they're 30 feet apart. can pretty safely assume they're in the same aquifer. And all previous VOC samples from the first well were non-detect, the last collected in 2010. 2012, they needed a new well. They drilled it in March. They sampled for VOCs in March. They got hits. And then
For the new well,
for the new well, yep.
which could have been contaminated from the glue.
Correct. So they resampled 3 months later in June, and all the levels that were previously detected were either non-detect or well below any health-based standard. So they were put on their routine 6-year monitoring frequency that's required for type 2 public water supplies that have to take VOC monitoring. So I just wanted to give that background because that's not all the information from that year. We did look at it. All indications don't point towards it being Gelman related at that site. It's from the new well being drilled in the.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that
So I just
seems
wanted
like
to
we could
clarify
be adding that to a note field on the well for anybody looking at the data going forward,
Yeah, so they know.
saying, you know, this,
I mean,
or this reading, you know, could have been affected by the glue in the casing. And that would,
those results are in the type 2 database. They're not in the Gelman database. So I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just not sure where to put it that it would be readily available
yeah,
at this
what,
point.
so
that's
what
why I wanted to
database are
clarify.
they in?
So the state has something called Water Track,
Uh-huh.
and that's how they track
What depth of the wells?
120 feet, give or take 2 feet.
You know, so,
Is that spelled in any clever way, or is it just like it sounds?
Just like it sounds, all one word. It's dying. It's an old system, no longer supported. They're trying to switch to one called Sidwith's Prime that was supposed to be implemented, I think, back in 2016.
so maybe we need a
Fingers
little
crossed we'll get
update
that.
on what other databases, public databases are out there that we can tie into to confirm or, you know, to correlate data. And it sounds like you have a pretty good handle on that, so maybe next meeting you can do a little update of that.
Yeah, the public doesn't have they can't just go in and look and see the
Yeah.
results. At this point, I think Sidwith might have that interface.
But that's something you can relay
Yeah,
to know that who do we have to talk to in order to
Yep.
get the data.
be happy to
Yeah.
give you more information on that.
And there's other information like that for other entities, like, and I talked to Kathy about this earlier, like for SIO, apparently every fire department has had foam, this kind of foam that is PFAS. So one of the questions that they've already asked is where has the foam been used in Scioto Township? And in particular, I asked, was foam used at any of the fires at Gelman?
Were there fires that can use?
Yes, there were fires at Gelman.
But they haven't found PFAS. Did they check for PFAS and?
That's-
All we have done is do the outfall currently, a couple weeks ago, and there was no PFAS. As far as physically doing soil and or groundwater on the property, that has not taken place yet. As we are doing with PFAS all over Washtenaw County, that is in the plans as we get indications that specifics.
I covered that in part of my email to Howard and to City Council. When they talked about PFAS, it was just one sample, it was on the outfall. The outfall isn't representative of all the purge wells. There's no purge wells where you might find PFAS on the site. And if you're gonna look for PFAS, you might wanna look at all these locations where the pipes end that we discussed earlier.
And please understand, there has been significant work done in Washtenaw County on PFAS.
Right.
And Jerry was here the last meeting, my supervisor. He's the PFAS contact for the Jackson District, the technical coordinator. He's the one to talk to about what has been done. There's been a significant sampling of surface waters, rivers, creeks, a bunch of stuff. And then site specifically, certain certain sites that we had information, had that. And so, don't,
National leaders.
right,
PFAS.
and like I said, although there hasn't been, other than that one specific on the outfall into Honey Creek of PFAS, and the reason that was done, it was part of the NPDES, the people that, DEQ people that does the NPDES permit, we wanted to make sure, DEQ wanted to make sure there was
It's
not.
an easy place to start.
Well,
because
it was not
you don't
an
have to drill a
exposure
well.
risk related to them doing treatment and disposing into Honey Creek, which then would move up,
Right.
so that, that way.
It's a natural place to start, but
And,
when you look at surface water, that's one thing. But there's a lot of these sites that are out there, groundwater is going to be the big long-term issue. Surface water can cleanse itself pretty quickly compared to groundwater.
it depends. And also, please realize that, Roger, industry is the source, but, I mean, just a big source of PFAS was,
Scotchgard.
well, yes, but I'm talking about wastewater treatment plant sludge and residue that's been land applied over
There
the
you go.
years.
That's right.
So, I mean, just if
Speaking of which-
we've done some research, or I haven't, I'm not on that group, I have dioxane to tuck me in at night.
We're holding it to it.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of farmland, I mean, that
Yeah, yeah.
wastewater treatment, residual that was land applied has been all over, so.
That's organic fertilizer that we're applying.
Right, but it has, because it was concentrated at the wastewater treatment plant from the from water, whatever, it is, that's real problematic. It makes it very difficult to say, okay, what's the source of that? Oh, so we're getting a detection here, what's the source?
Yeah.
Well, if they've been spreading stuff that had it in there because no one knew about it back then,
Well, 3M knew about it.
so,
But there's
we're
other
getting
things
outside of it.
besides 3M, there's heavy metals.
So, just realize, if you want information on PFAS, Jerry, would be the contact. He will be coming to the next quarterly meeting, daytime meeting, which is February.
And I really appreciate
Okay.
the response that the state's had on PFAS. What I'm worried about is that the little databases that are getting created for all these PFAS sites are going to be no better than the Gelman database. That I'd like to see.
It's the time to get it right.
I'd like to
It's just starting
see
it,
the state really tighten up on their data acquisition and storage and dissemination and transparency and all that stuff, so that it, we're in this century instead of last century, basically. Speaking of soil application stuff, do you think we ever might find out where all the soil transfers ended up from the Gelman site?
From the marshy area?
When you mean soil disposal?
Yeah.
That what occurred from
Well,
the
that we know that they
limited soil
took-
removal activities?
They removed soil.
I mean, that's documented, they removed soils. Okay, where it ended up?
I know some of it ended up in the Wayne landfill. We don't know where the other one ended up. Somebody suspects it's the Ann Arbor landfill. I hope it's not somebody's backyard that wanted clean fill. And then within the site, like when they put the sewer right away there, what did that do to shift any soil dioxane? So I'm moving many things here. Pipelines, drain fields, irrigation. I need to train myself on how to find all this. Anyway, when they put the sewer line in behind the Gelman buildings, they had to move soil. Where did they move, I don't think there was any attention paid to how high the concentrations were in that soil that got moved. There doesn't seem to be any follow-up on what effect that might have had on where the dioxin is going to leach to in the future. You haven't seen anything like that, have you, Dan?
No,
On that
not mine.
particular-
And again, the file is massive.
Right.
The file is the length of this room kind of type. So, and it's hard copy. So it's in my bits and pieces that I grab when I get questions. I have not seen anything on disposal.
Do you think
of
we
that.
can ever get that digitized?
I mean, as Jerry pointed out last meeting, I mean, we would love to do that. Again, it's related
you
to
a bet.
money and time, you know, whether we could hire a person to do that. Now, here's the kicker. I want to make sure everybody
Maybe get
aware.
Google to do it.
Well, no. Here,
They scan.
it is by law.
Oh,
Our
yeah,
files we have to have one file on a site. I mean, just literally, just think of Gelman is a huge in the court. Well, even the tiniest little site, we have to have a format and have to have an original file.
Right, you gotta be able to trace back to the original
Right,
document.
so there's all kinds of problems that people start talking about when you get, well, let's get a subcontractor to do this. Well, it is the state, you know, by law, we have to have,
The state owns it.
and so suddenly it may be required state people do it. And so there's all kinds of speed bumps.
I actually ran a document conversion outfit out in Redford for a couple of years, and it's not easy.
No.
We had automatic, we were sheet feeding from big automatic
Right.
loaders
So
from
that's what
service
we're-
manuals.
Like I said.
And that's easy stuff, because we snap them out of the binder, you know, this is maps and drawings and.
And
all
what's
different
currently going
formats,
on
and
in
it's
Jackson
crazy.
is we're hoping on every other site, except Gelman, and maybe a couple other large ones, is everything will be electronic. Now, when we get documents in BEAs, I'm sure you've heard of BEAs, any current BEAs come in, even if they come in hard copy, we said, hey, send them electronic, we'll get it in. But if they come in hard copy, it's immediately scanned and put into our EDM system, electronic data management system. So they're trying to get away from now on, just not hard copy. Gelman is the outlier. It's just the way the complexity and that way. So historic files, that's way down, Roger. I'm sorry. You know, it's just we're trying to get from now on, at least start a good starting point from now on to get electronic, and we just haven't come up with that format yet.
So Roger, I wonder if I could just make a couple of quick points on the agenda here, and not take too long on it. One thing I would like the CARD group to start thinking about is, since we have a change in governor, and we were told that Superfund the next step for Superfund was blocked by Schneider, former governor. I'd like the CARD group and city council to consider how we may be able to petition the new governor and DEQ director to work with us toward maybe setting up a Superfund full evaluation. You know, the Sierra Club, the Ann Arbor Township, and Scioto Township all petitioned for that.
And Congresswoman Debbie Dinkle is in support of it.
She is nuanced,
Oh, okay.
but generally supportive of it. You know. The other thing is, you know, there was a report in the news that Governor Schneider, before he left office, set aside $70 million or $69 million for cleanup, environmental cleanup program.
When's the second round of
Clean
grants?
Michigan Initiative
It's a $69 million
per year.
per year. I don't know how many years it's going to go for, but I wonder if, you know, if there's some way we could tap into that as a city and as a township and as a county.
So last week, we got an email from somebody at the state. It wasn't Kurt. That just happened again today, but it was on the same topic. The MDEQ has $60 million worth of some kind of clean water actionable grants. Do you know about that?
You're outside of what I'm.
All right, I figured. I just thought I'd ask.
I got the blinders on. That is, with the
Well, you
change
signed
of
the law.
governor,
There was a
with
couple
the change
different
of
acronyms.
governor and the recent, it's, you know, that process is going to be a while before the DEQ identifies exactly how much, what tasks are eligible, what sites would be
I
eligible.
just want to put that out in the ether
You
to
know,
let
it's-
people know that that's a potential money source that maybe we could use in the interim to get some things done that we think are important on the Gelman site. And, you know, city council could join in on this effort, and then the townships, I'm sure, are totally interested. We talked about the near surface water studies you're going to partake in, which is good to hear that. There's also, I got an email that there's a lawsuit by a dozen or more environmental groups charging that the EPA is not enforcing TSCA the way they should. That the EPA has said they're going to look at some exposures but not all exposures. So that could affect, and 1,4-dioxane is part of that. They cite that as, PFAS and 1,4-dioxane as big issues that they want, industry wants EPA to pull away from, and they're saying TSCA lets them do that. This lawsuit wants the court to step in and say they can't do that. EPA cannot pick and choose what they want to look at. If it's in...
What challenges them, challenges what they want to do.
So that could affect 1,4-dioxane if it's not, if the courts do not judge that EPA is being inappropriate on how they're deciding which chemicals to look at and how to look at them. So why 1,4-dioxane is a big issue is that the Lautenberg Act allowed 10 chemicals, 10 of thousands and thousands of chemicals in the United States to be evaluated, to be added to the National Toxic Substance List.
Not added, but to be evaluated.
Well, for eventual inclusion. Of the thousands and thousands of chemicals, tens of thousands, 1,4-dioxane was included. Okay, so that tells you the level of concern there is for this compound because it's being found on lots of places, much more toxic than they thought. It's very miscible in water, and water systems are being heavily contaminated all over the country. And when they clean up sites, this is what's left a lot of times. And so this is a really difficult chemical to get rid of. And that's why they added it to this Lautenberg Act. So this is why it could impact this cleanup, because if the EPA says, well, we're not concerned about groundwater contamination, or we're not concerned unless it's above 85 or whatever. So it's something we need to keep our eyes on.
Is there someone tracking that in, say, Dingo's office or Peter's office?
Like I said, it's a lawsuit by major environment. I mean, it's like
The
dozens.
Environmental Defense Fund, National
I mean, it's
Research Defense
every
Council,
meaningful environmental
Cape
group
Fear
in the
River
country
Basin.
has joined this lawsuit.
Oh, okay.
So it's, and every lawyer they have is involved. So they're
And
very good.
NRDC is one of the plaintiffs, you said?
I think so.
believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite
So-
a few. I mean, it's big. Yeah.
It's a big deal.
I don't know if you know about Cape Fear, but that's,
Yeah.
yeah. So their
Yeah.
group is part of the lawsuit and.
So anyway, just to put that out there as a
And we haven't
something to
heard, we
keep
couldn't
track
find
of.
much about it, but we got this email.
Bloomberg does have an article. I almost tried to, I have a link there, but I couldn't find it on my
But it's
tablet.
worth watching.
But if you look up TSCA, EPA, environmental groups, a lawsuit, you'll probably see the listing for that. So, okay.
Yeah,
So-
and I'll finish up very quickly. The last issue, number 7. We'd like to put together a prioritized list of concerns to present to the DEQ to help them. And Bob Bailey has expressed an interest, and I and Roger and anybody else would like to be part of that. We'll be meeting outside of the regular card meeting to set that up. So please get in touch with me if you'd like to help with that.
Yeah, we have the concerns in a spreadsheet format, and it's in a format that you can actually track if anything has been done about the, by the way, this is another thing I sent out. This is a modeling that was done by another set of researchers, and it shows that dioxane that's going in a sand layer permeates down to a clay layer. And then as the source of the dioxane is stopped, the sand layer it gradually goes away, the dioxane goes away.
And the
Except
clay
that
layer,
it's reverse dispersed from the clay back to the sand layer. So they were talking about how, their model for this changes how they think, because it's not the sand layer where the dioxane resides, but it comes back from the clay layer. My issue with this is that this is only a couple meters. What if the
the source of the dioxane is not stopped. That dioxane will eventually make it through, or be stored even farther deeper into the clay layer, even longer to come out.
Harder to get to.
And that'd be the next step on this. So I'm gonna, I think I shared this with everybody. If I didn't, I'll share it again. Did you see this? Did I share this with you?
I think so.
Yeah. And Larry Lemke, I shared with him too, and he says, this is really timely because he has a paper under peer review right now that relates to this, and it's gonna have the results available in a few months. It's about dispersion and redispersion.
Well, clay layer is also described as a blocking agent. It's not going to get through the clay. The layers below are protected. This would indicate that probably not the case. It goes through the clay.
It can go, especially if it's a narrow, if it's just a thin clay layer, like we see at certain parts of this site.
Well, let me just tell you something. When you look at porous pavements up down, the city has worked on, and I've worked on this, trying to get the city to do it. The guy who wrote the book on porous pavement, one of the top 10 myths is it doesn't work on clay, and he says they think that clay completely blocks water absorption, but actually water goes through clay.
Just takes
It
a lot
just takes
longer.
longer. And so porous pavement actually does work on clay layers, and water will percolate through the clay. It just takes longer, and so this is an indication that clay isn't really a barrier for a lot of these contaminants.
And
especially if they're
not only a
especially if
barrier, but
they're
it can recontaminate
Yeah.
the sand layer above it. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough for that. So I think we're over time.
And just wanted to say, I'm on the Environmental Commission, so I'm trying to get up to speed so that I can give them an update
Okay.
on, like, this meeting. So the next meeting of them is Thursday night, January 24th,
Okay.
from 7 to 9 at upstairs in the City Hall. And so I will give them a summary of some of the things that we've talked about, but I would like to give them a bigger summary.
I would give them the notion that our governor's changed, our attorney general has changed, our secretary of state has changed, our city council has changed. So
They keep forgetting that part.
I think there's opportunity here to actually tackle some of these things
Yes.
that have been put on the back burners for too long.
Well, I find myself also on an internal committee, which is the Policy Agenda Committee. And so we have to set what the council's policies are going to be, or policy goals.
What
And so,
concerns.
yeah, concerns, and so we're setting those with the fiscal year right now, I think, so this year's expiring in July, and we haven't gotten to a lot of them, we probably won't, to be honest. And so I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to pushing environmental issues to the top of that heap.
Yeah.
We have all kinds of issues in the city, but, you can only do so much, and so we want to prioritize.
And encourage people to serve on boards and commissions. So if anyone wants to join,
Well, I've tried to serve on boards, and I've been
We're changing.
I've been
that process.
ostracized. I've been
Yeah.
ostracized.
We'll have a new process.
Okay.
you're not the
March.
first good person I've heard say that.
Even I
Yeah.
couldn't even finish the Citizens
Yeah,
Academy.
I've applied and not.
I was being bullied so bad.
Well, I think,
Because of the Lockwood thing.
dynamic.
Well, you look at the planning commission, and you see, it's almost a lockstep group.
We're trying
We
to
need
clean
more
that up.
diversity.
Yeah, there's
That's
not a lot-
one of
there's
our
not a lot of planning
strategies.
going on, honestly.
That's one of our
We're very
strategy
reactionary
sessions, is to open up the boards and commissions and get fresh
I
people.
was being tempted.
That's all right.
Well, I really appreciate you guys coming.
Oh, we said this publicly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
to.
think you're gonna make a
Thank you.
difference.
Thanks for coming. This is a record
Can you
number.
send me a
Yes,
copy?
and, yeah, would you like that every
And
month?
Jeff, I have a quick question.
Since I'm coming every month, we're trying to get.
I'll still be in DC.
Like we are, am I correct? It's the quarterly meeting next month.
Next, yeah, next.